Have you ever dreamed of soaring through the clouds with the wind beneath your wings, of leaping from a cliff and catching an updraft, seeing the world not as a map, but as a living, breathing tapestry below? It's a fantasy we've all had, a deep, almost primal yearning for the freedom of the sky. It is the myth of Icarus, the promise of angels, the ultimate escape. But what if I told you that for a human to actually fly, it would require a biological transformation so grotesque it would be a living nightmare? What if the price of flight wasn't just wax and feathers, but our very humanity? The truth is, evolution didn't make a mistake by keeping us on the ground. It made a choice. Our lineage was shaped by selective pressures that consistently rewarded three things: walking on two legs, having incredibly dexterous hands, and growing a comically large brain. Wings were never on the table. Today, we're going to peel back that beautiful fantasy of flight to reveal the terrifying anatomical body plan for a flying human. We will build this creature, piece by painful piece. And by the end, you'll be grateful you're stuck on the ground. Before we start the gruesome redesign of the human form, we have to understand why this is necessary in the first place. Human flight is blocked by a trifecta of brutal, overlapping realities: evolution, anatomy, and physics. They form three concentric walls around our fantasy, each one harder to break through than the last. The first wall is evolution. Natural selection is an unsentimental accountant. It only favors traits that provide a tangible benefit to survival and reproduction. For our distant ancestors, the advantage came from standing up on the savannah, freeing our hands to carry food, use tools, and protect our young. The evolutionary path that might have led to proto-wings was simply never a better option than the path that led to hands, the very things that let us shape the world. The second wall is our anatomy. Simply put, our bodies are built for endurance walking, not for propulsion through the air. Every part of us, from the S-curve of our spine to the flat, broad shape of our pelvis, is optimized for bipedal life on the ground. Bird anatomy, by contrast, is a masterclass in specialization for flight. They have proportionally lighter skeletons, incredibly powerful flight muscles anchored to a unique bone, and respiratory systems that are vastly more efficient for the demands of flight. We don't just lack wings, we lack every single supporting feature that makes wings work. The final, most unforgiving wall is physics. Flight is a constant battle against gravity, a battle fought with lift, thrust, and drag. The core of the problem is a concept called the scaling law. As an animal gets bigger, its mass increases much faster than its muscle strength. This is why the largest flying birds are pushing the absolute limits of what's possible with biological flight. We are vastly larger and heavier. To get a 70-kilogram human off the ground, the numbers involved become not just difficult, but fundamentally absurd. Our bodies are too heavy, and our muscles are far too weak. So, to achieve flight, we can't just stick on a pair of wings. We have to shatter all three walls. We must construct a creature that could, in theory, exist. But in doing so, we will have to systematically dismantle everything that makes us human. Let's start with the most obvious requirement, the wings. Where do they even go? Our fantasy often gives us an extra set of limbs, sprouting majestically from our shoulder blades like an angel. But in the rigid rules of vertebrate evolution, that's pure fiction. No known vertebrate has ever evolved a third pair of limbs. Wings are always modified existing limbs. For bats and birds, they're modified arms. So the first sacrifice is a brutal one. We must give up our hands. Our arms, the instruments of our creativity and dominion over the planet, must be repurposed. They must elongate, the bones fusing and shifting to form the scaffold for a wing. But what kind of wing? To generate enough lift to get a human airborne, the wingspan would need to be enormous. Estimates suggest that for an average adult, a functional wingspan would need to be at least 6 to 7 meters. approaching the width of a city bus. Imagine a person whose arms, from fingertip to fingertip, stretch that wide. The wings themselves would add significant weight, compounding the very problem we're trying to solve. This immediately creates a catastrophic structural problem. Our skeleton is not equipped to handle this. Our shoulder blades are held in place by muscle and connected to the skeleton by the collarbones. While strong, this structure is not built to anchor the colossal muscles needed for powered flight. The strain would be devastating. To solve this, we need to look at the blueprint of a bird. The entire torso has to be rebuilt. The human sternum, the flat bone in the center of your chest, would have to undergo a horrifying transformation. It would need to grow outward into a massive blade-like structure called a keel or carina. This is the anchor point for the flight muscles. Picture this: a bone erupting from your chest, creating a solid V-shaped prow where your pectoral muscles used to be. This keel would be so large it would fundamentally reshape our entire upper body, forcing our internal organs to be compressed and rearranged behind it. The flexibility of our torso would be gone, replaced by a rigid, fused cage of bone designed for one purpose: power. And what about the rest of the skeleton? It's far too heavy. While the idea that bird skeletons are universally lighter than mammal skeletons of the same size is a misconception, their bones are adapted for the unique stresses of flight. To reduce weight, our bones would need to become pneumatized, like many birds, filled with air sacs and internal struts for minimal weight and maximum strength. This sounds efficient, but the consequence is terrifying fragility. A fall that might just bruise a normal human could lead to catastrophic, shattering fractures. Our dense, heavy bones are a form of armor, a testament to our life on solid ground. We would have to trade this durability for lightness. Our very bones would become a liability. The skull would have to shrink. Our heavy jaw would need to lighten, and our legs, no longer the primary mode of locomotion, would become spindly and thin. So, we have a new skeleton, a creature with vast wings for arms, a blade of bone jutting from its chest, and a fragile, reinforced frame. Now, we have to power it, and this is where the true horror of the metabolic cost of flight becomes clear. As early as the 17th century, the scientist Giovanni Borelli concluded that human pectoral muscles are fundamentally too weak to power flight, and he was right. We just don't have the raw strength. To fix this, our flying human needs a complete muscular overhaul. The pectoral muscles would need to become the dominant feature of the body, accounting for a massive percentage of total body mass. In some birds, it's over 25%. These would not be the chest muscles of a bodybuilder. They would be two colossal slabs of flesh anchored to that enormous keel and running up to the repurposed arm-wing bones. They would be so large that they would dictate the entire shape of the creature. The center of gravity would shift dramatically upwards, making walking on two legs clumsy and inefficient. The once powerful muscles in our legs and back would atrophy, becoming little more than landing gear. Our body would become a grotesque, top-heavy machine built solely around the engine of its chest. And an engine this powerful needs a staggering amount of fuel. Flying is one of the most energetically expensive forms of locomotion in the animal kingdom. A bird's metabolism at rest is already high, but in flight it can skyrocket. Our flying human would be a metabolic furnace, a creature defined by a singular, all-consuming need to eat. To put this in perspective, an active human might burn 2,500 to 3,000 calories a day. A flying human would likely need to consume an amount of calories that would make a Tour de France cyclist on their most grueling day look like a slacker. We're talking about a demand so high that it changes everything about existence. The life of this creature would not be one of soaring majestically over mountains. It would be a life of frantic, constant, ravenous hunger, Hours upon hours would be dedicated not to flight, but to finding and consuming enough high-energy food to fuel the next flight. There would be no room for art, for culture, for contemplation. There would only be the gnawing emptiness in its stomach and the desperate search for the next meal. The dream of freedom becomes the prison of metabolism. This creature would be perpetually on the verge of starvation, a slave to its own biology. Even with a redesigned skeleton and a supercharged muscular engine, our flying human would immediately fail for a simple reason: it couldn't breathe. The engine is useless if you can't get enough oxygen to it. Human lungs, for all their complexity, are surprisingly inefficient for the demands of flight. We breathe in a tidal fashion, meaning old, deoxygenated air mixes with fresh air. It works perfectly fine on the ground, but for the insane oxygen demands of powered flight, especially at altitude, it's a death sentence. To solve this, we must once again turn to the avian blueprint. We would need to replace our lungs with a bird's respiratory system, one of the most efficient in the animal kingdom. This is a system of unidirectional airflow. Air flows in one continuous loop through a series of air sacs scattered throughout the body, passing through the lungs for gas exchange on both inhalation and exhalation. This means the lungs are constantly bathed in fresh, highly oxygenated air. But installing this system would be an anatomical nightmare. These air sacs aren't just in the chest, they invade the hollow bones and fill the body cavity. Our already rearranged organs would be further compressed and pushed aside. Our diaphragm, the muscle that drives our breathing now, would become useless, its function replaced by the rocking motion of the keeled sternum itself. Breathing would no longer be a gentle rise and fall of the chest, but a mechanical, whole-body process. Paired with this new respiratory system is the heart. The pump that sends this super-oxygenated blood to the colossal flight muscles must also be radically upgraded. Birds typically have proportionally larger and more powerful hearts than mammals of similar size to meet the high demands of flight. A flying human's heart would need to be a massive muscular organ, beating at a tempo that would put our own cardiovascular system into immediate failure. Blood pressure would be dangerously high. It would be a system living on the edge, a marvel of performance that is also perpetually one beat away from catastrophic collapse. So, after all this restructuring, all this biological sacrifice, what do we have? Let's step back and look at the creature we've built. It stands before us, a grotesque parody of the human form. Its arms are gone, replaced by wings that stretch to an incredible, burdensome width. Its chest is not the familiar shape of a human, but a deep, sharp prow of bone that dominates its silhouette. Its upper body is a swollen mass of pectoral muscle, while its legs have withered into spindly, bird-like stilts, barely capable of supporting its top-heavy frame on the ground. Its bones are thin-walled, a constant risk of fracture. This being lives a life of desperate, gnawing hunger, its every waking moment consumed by the need to fuel its ferociously demanding metabolism. Its insides have been completely replumbed, with a network of air sacs and a hyper-powered heart that exists on a knife's edge of performance and failure. And perhaps, most importantly, it has lost the single greatest tool of its ancestors, its hands, the ability to grasp, to build, to write, to create, to gesture, to comfort, all of it sacrificed for the singular, all-consuming function of flight. This creature could not build a fire, or write a poem, or hold its child. It is no longer a creator, it is a machine. This is the ultimate consequence. This is the evolutionary trade-off. We think of evolution as a ladder, with us at the top, but it's a branching tree, with each branch representing a different answer to the question of survival. Our branch found its answer on the ground, in our minds, and in our hands. To abandon that for the branch of a bird is not to climb higher, but to jump to a completely different tree. losing everything that made our own branch successful in the first place. If you find this descent into the uncanny valley of biology fascinating, and you enjoy exploring the scientific answers to these kinds of thought experiments, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. And let me know in the comments, what other human upgrades do you think would actually be a curse? In the end, the fantasy of human flight is so powerful because it represents a freedom we don't have. The terrifying body plan for a flying human reveals that the price of wings isn't just bone and muscle. It's the very essence of what it means to be us. So next time you see a bird soaring effortlessly overhead, perhaps don't feel envy. Feel gratitude for the solid, unyielding ground beneath your feet.